All right, welcome to the Life Changers Playbook. So this podcast is dedicated to helping give you the resources that you need to go out and change the world. And I have an amazing speaker with us today. I met him pretty recently, and as we got talking, I realized, you know what? His message, what he does to help people, needs to get out there. So I invited him on, and we are blessed enough that he said yes. So I want to introduce Marshal Carper with Carper Communications. Marshal, tell us who you are. What do you do?
So my name is Marshall. I run a content marketing agency. So we help clients use content to build better relationships and better engagement with not only their current customers, but future customers.
That is awesome. And one thing I love about what I've learned through Marshall is you can actually use video games in marketing. So would you tell us just a little bit, maybe share some stories about how you do that?
Yeah, so this is I'll geek out pretty quickly. So if you need to stop me, just jump in.
Bring
So
it.
the sister company to Carver Communications is Make a Cat Studios. So we're also based in Pittsburgh, and we do brand-based games. So in the event world, for example, we had a client that was a medical device manufacturer, international, but they were doing all kinds of trade shows and expos, and they were seeing their engagement at events decline. Just surgeons weren't stopping by their booth. So we built them an arcade cabinet that took a retro spin on one of their new cardiovascular tools. So felt like Pac-Man, but was themed around how the tool worked, what the tool did, what the purpose of the tool was. Full stand-up cabinet, so it felt like going to an arcade, big leaderboard over top, so you could see how all the other surgeons were competing. And we use that arcade cabinet for lead generation. So instead of having your typical trade show booth, a couple people in polo shirts with brochures, there's something big, flashy that drew their attention, and then started stimulating conversation of like, oh wow, it really can go through the vein and not scrape the walls that way. How does that work? And it built a lot of organic conversation and turned into also a pretty clever way to do follow-ups on the leads that you generated. You can kind of poke fun at how high their score was or how low it was. And that's a lot different from what a lot of other brands in that space are doing. So there's a ton of ways that you can spin a brand-based game, and that's just one that we've seen be pretty successful.
That is phenomenal. I can only imagine walking through a trade show for sounds like doctors and surgeons, which sounds
Mm-hmm.
pretty sterile. You're walking through and here's an arcade. I bet they got so much traffic from that. That is amazing.
Yeah, we saw double-digit percent increases on their lead gen per event just by having the cabinet there. Yeah, it was pretty impactful stuff.
That is awesome. So on that note, I'm sure people are like, oh man, I want to talk to Marshall. How do I gamify my company? So Marshall, real quick, just throw out, how would someone contact you?
Yeah, so you can look me up, carpercommunications.com. You can also check out makeacatstudios.com if you want to get specifically into video game stuff. Just drop a note that you're looking for Marshall on any of those contact forms, and I'll get back to you directly.
Awesome. Thank you, Marshall. So one of the reasons I invited Marshall on is because we do a ton with events and we help people strategize, plan out, how do we get the most out of it? And one thing I saw for Marshall is he helps companies come in and maximize their investment from attending an event, just like that story you shared. So Marshall, could you give us some tips and tactics? What can we do if we're sponsoring a live event? What could we do to get better engagement, to get more leads, stuff like that?
Yeah, so there's a couple different flavors of this. I mean, it depends a little bit on the brand. Are you coming in a B2B kind of mindset where you're going to the event to generate leads and to build relationships, or is it B2C engagement where you're working directly with consumers? A lot of the clients we talk to, they're doing event sponsorships or doing more of the high level B2B stuff where they're trying to close big deals, build new big relationships. But in either case, the big mistake that I often see is that when brands do an event or an event sponsorship or event attendance, is they wait until the event starts to begin their engagement. And at that point, you're already pretty far behind because the event, any event, is pretty busy. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of chaos. People are going to start getting tired as the event goes on. So it's really tough to get attention if you're kicking it off when the event doors open. So one of the biggest things you can do to get more ROI on your events is to begin your outreach prior to the event. There's a couple ways to do that. We have a surprising amount of success just asking event organizers for their attendee list. So if you spend a bunch of money for a sponsorship at an event, like buku dollars, then a lot of times the event organizers are a lot more friendly about handing over a list of emails of people that are attending the event. Now, I'm not advocating that you just spam the heck out of that list, but what you can do is make a sincere direct email to that person, introduce yourself, say, hey, we're going to be at this event X amount of weeks from now. Would love to block out half an hour to talk about what you're doing and maybe how we can help. And that like simple touch, even if that person doesn't get back to you right away or doesn't book the meeting, immediately kind of puts your brand above the noise because now you've already built awareness before the event's even started. So something like that, using that sort of early outreach can make the event a lot more successful. And then if you don't get the list, you can build it manually, which can take a little bit more work. Maybe get a virtual assistant to do it. Maybe get one of your more entry-level people to do it because it's a little bit of a grind. But you can find people that are attending the event. So build out a list of other sponsors because sometimes sponsor relationships, peer-to-peer stuff could be valuable. Maybe they're clients or maybe they're just referral sources that you should be meeting with and networking with anyways. Go through event hashtags. A lot of events have hashtags that update annually where they add 2018 or 2019 or 2020 based on the event usage. So if you go through last year's hashtags on LinkedIn or Twitter or Facebook, a lot of times you can pull out the people that attended last year and build a list based on that. So if you get creative, you can still find those people and get in front of them early.
That is a phenomenal idea. Look at the past, because anything you put out there on the internet, it's out there, baby. Right? Like, there's no hiding it. So go back, look at those event hashtags, look at what they're doing in the past. That's a great idea to build up that list. And heck, you could probably even go post and comment in those areas, bring them up top of mind, which that's awesome. I love it. So another thing I love is reach out before, because there are so many people that don't do anything until the event happens. And then they're like, well, I didn't get any ROI. Oh, woe is me. So I love that idea. So what else could we do to get more engagement, to get more ROI out of our event sponsorships?
Yeah, so I mean, in addition to the early outreach, there's some other things that you can do digitally that can make the event more impactful. I mean, part of this is I'm assuming that your event presence is pretty buttoned up and set. I mean, there's a lot to be said for making sure you invest in your booth, that you invest in the people that you're sending. You're sending knowledgeable people that can have good conversations. I feel like a lot of organizations have this default mentality of they send the lowest people on the totem pole out to the front line. And not that those people don't have potential, but it can be really difficult for them to have the best kinds of conversations. So if you really want your event to generate leads or to generate new customers, you should probably be sending the people that have the best ability to do that. So don't just grab the intern, don't just grab the fresh hire and have them stand there and hand out brochures. You need to be sending someone that can have a worthwhile conversation. A lot of times that means higher level people in the company. So I'm assuming you're doing all of that pretty well. So on top of that, especially if you're building a list ahead of time, you can start running ads around the event. So prior to the event, maybe you're serving up ads to that email list that you've generated. LinkedIn has good targeting on this. Facebook has good targeting where you can build an audience based on emails. Mm-hmm. So you can do pre-event outreach with that. So it's a little softer than a direct email, but you're still getting your brand in front of people. And then when the event is going, you can run geo-targeted ads. So the larger events are especially great for this, where there's a pretty big footprint that the event's occupying. So like Concrete World that's in Las Vegas every year is this massive expo. Big brands rent out whole parking lots because you can go drive like forklifts and stuff around as part of the booth experience. So it's like, it's a huge event. So you can geofence that whole event. And anybody that has their phone and they're browsing online in that area, you can serve them up targeted ads. So that's another way to kind of push your booth to people that are most likely there for that reason. Now, the smaller events, you might end up like, maybe there's like a gymnastics event next door in the ballroom. You might end up getting a couple people that aren't the right target, but a couple extra wasted impressions are worth it to get in front of people that are going to be hanging out that event on their phone anyways. And we're really playing that attention game because, again, the event's chaos. There's a lot of things grabbing their attention, and you can't count on someone walking by your booth necessarily. So the more ways you can get in front of them, tell them that you're there, and show them something interesting that makes them want to have a conversation with you or visit the booth to try a product, the better off you're going to be.
Yeah, I love that. Two things that I want to reiterate. Number one, don't send your freaking interns. Like I can think back to a couple events I was working where like the people at the event working the event did not want to be at the event working the event. That is a bad investment. So I think that is huge. Don't do that. The other thing, geofencing. What a great idea. What a great way to get in front of people. Because most people won't recognize that name. Like for businesses, it takes 10 to 20 impressions before someone's like, oh yeah, I've heard of you. So using that tactics to get in front of them, when they do walk by the booth, they'll be like, oh, I have heard of you. Ironically, it's because you told them to hear about you.
Yeah, I mean, this is all stuff that your brand should probably be doing anyways digitally. We're just hyper focusing it on this investment you made, because if you're attending the event, you've already decided that a lot of the people that I want to meet, connect with are going to be here. Mm-hmm. And it's so expensive to do an event, not just the sponsorship, but then you have the travel, you have to pay the people to be there, you have to pay for all the collateral, build out the booth. I mean, you're easily pretty deep in on a budget spend. So I was recently at PAX East, so it's a big video game convention, and there's booth setups there where, I mean, just like back of the envelope math, not that I'm revealing what somebody told me, but like me estimating based on what I know how these industries work. A brand like Geico is at an event with a big booth with 5 or 6 people running the booth. They're probably spending $200,000 or $300,000 on a weekend event. And that's a huge investment to let just those couple days be the success or fail point, right?
Right. I love that. So what else? Because that is so true. We've got to make sure we're focused on our ROI. What else can we do to increase ROI from an event?
Yeah, I mean, so there's the pre, the during, and the post, right? So we've talked a little bit about some of the prep work that you can do. And if your listeners, your viewers are interested in like really in-depth stuff on this, so I think you and I recently met because of the Social Media Examiner article that I did. So all of this is written out. There's not like a super secret sauce here. I've made all this public. So if you look up the article there, you can get the full breakdown. So we talked a little bit about pre, talked a little about during, and then post, making sure that your follow-up is really consistent. I can't tell you how many brands that I talk to that they go through all this effort to get to an event and get attention from potential leads, potential prospects, and they don't spend enough effort or budget or attention to what they do afterwards. So you collected a bunch of business cards, you collected a bunch of emails. What are you going to do that is interesting and engaging after they've left? And I don't just mean sending a follow-up email of like, hey, buy our stuff. You need to have something that's a bit more meaningful than that, because if that person stopped by your booth, they also stopped by 12 others, right? So they're going to be getting a ton of follow-ups from not only your competitors, but just people that are also at the event, right? So if you're going to do a follow-up, you need to make sure it's well-crafted, it's relevant, it's interesting, and it's worthwhile for that person. So part of that is the community that you're in. So if the event had a theme, or if there was a talk that everyone was really interested in that kind of turned into the buzz, maybe you can piggyback on that and make it part of the conversation that you build. Or maybe you're just doing research on the prospects. Again, maybe this is more B2B. You're crafting personal emails for each person. So that way it's a it's a tailored message, not just a big generic blast, but you definitely have to put a lot of effort into crafting that follow-up, because it's really easy to just burn all those opportunities pretty quickly if you don't take them seriously.
Yeah, I love that. My belief is the fortune's in the follow-up. And I've
Mm-hmm.
been to a ton of events where I talk to vendors and I give them my contact information. Once I counted, I talked and gave out my information to 15 different companies that I wanted to do business with. One followed up with me.
Mm-hmm.
One out of 15. And you're investing this money to get here and you're not going to follow up? That's crazy. So I
Yeah,
love that.
and there's some silly stuff that leads to that, right? Because you're doing the business card handout game. I mean, you're dragging around your laptop bag or whatever. You lose cards, ends up in a weird pants pocket. Like, it's easy to lose track of that stuff. So have a system. And this sounds silly to talk about where you put business cards, but put them in the same pocket. When you get back to your hotel room that night, put them in your CRM right away. What I do, because I'm a total spaz, is if I get a card from someone and I walk away, I immediately take a picture of it, because I just assume I'm going to lose it. So that way I have it in my image cloud. So if I need to go find it again, that I can. Because really simple missteps like that can blow an opportunity, right? Because it might not even be that they're intentionally ignoring you. It might be like, man, where's that guy's card? I can't find it. And then you're trying to remember the name and the company, and before you know it, the opportunity's gone.
Exactly. And the other thing is, I don't know about you, but I'll get even voicemails. I'll get a voicemail. I'll listen to it and I'll be like, yes, I need to call that person back, but not this second. And then 3 weeks later, I look at my voicemail and I think, oh, I'm such a jerk. I didn't call him yet. And then I call him, right? We are such a small piece of our prospects' mental capacity. Mm-hmm. Like, if you want to do business with someone, it's your job to make sure you are in front of them. Because if you aren't following up, they've got so much other stuff going on. It's crazy.
Yeah, so, and it's okay to get help too. So one of our clients, they're specialists in appointment setting. So basically, what their work is somebody hires them to go call prospects to set the initial appointment, and then their client comes in and picks up the sale. So basically, they do a ton of cold calling on behalf of their clients. Okay. They're like a call center on steroids, basically. They're way more evolved than like your traditional idea of what a call center would be. Like, it's a bunch of high-level salespeople doing cold calls on behalf of their clients. So one of the things that they do when they get a big event list is they hand it off to one of their sales associates to do the appointment setting. So that way, the salesperson that went to the event, that developed all the initial relationships, maybe they have 40 people you need to follow up with. That can take a long time, but if they hand that off to a team, that team can crank through them, manage all the extra touches, manage all the follow-up touches. The salesperson can jump back in whenever the appointment is set. So there's ways to manage it if your time is pressed or you feel like there's too much work there, but you've got to plan ahead a little bit to make sure you are managing it.
Yeah. And that is a great tactic and technique to maximize your time, right? There's so many people that get caught up in time. I need to do all this follow-up. Well, the follow-up needs done. You don't necessarily need to do it. So I think that's a great recommendation, is how can I leverage that time to get better results?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Awesome. Anything else you can think of that people should be aware of when it comes to, hey, I've sponsored an event. How do I get return on investment for it?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've covered the big pieces. Then it comes down to the devil's in the details, right? I mean, if you're going to go to an event, showing up is not enough. We've already covered that idea in general, but you should, just like when you run a marketing campaign, you don't run a marketing campaign without really thinking about what the message is, without really thinking about what the call to action is going to be, what the hook's going to be, how are you catching someone's attention. So just like you wouldn't put up a billboard without putting some thought into what the design is going to be, what you want to happen from the billboard, you can't go to an event without thinking about it like a campaign. So you're at the event. What's your message? What's the theme? What's making you stand out? How do you fit into the landscape? What sets you apart from the competitors? All of that has to be part of the overall design. And if you just show up to talk about, hey, these are our products, cool, you're probably going to have a hard time. The brands that really kill at events go in with a clear campaign strategy in mind, and they have a good idea what they want to pop out on the other end. And I've been having a ton of conversations with, brands I've connected with at events recently. And a lot of these metrics are soft, right? So if you're sponsoring an event, it's not going to be a hard, solid ROI of, we spent this amount, we got this many customers out the back end, especially at the more competitive events. You have to also look at fuzzier metrics like how many people just came to our booth, how many new connections do we make, how many people tried our thing. It might not be direct dollar-to-dollar ROI, but even the impressions matter. So that sucks because you want to be able to say it was worth this much, but you also have to be willing to play the long game of, I met someone at this event and 6 months later they become a customer. It's tough, but it's also how it works.
Yeah, and that is a great reminder because it's so true. We cannot control when someone buys from us or if they buy from us. So we've got to recognize that, hey, this is part of our system. And I loved what you said about the way I put it in my head was, this is a campaign. It's not an event, because so many people, when they sponsor an event, they think, oh, it's an event, which we treat events differently than we treat campaigns in the marketing world. So I think that is a key distinction. I love it, Marshall.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many clever things that spill out of that when you start going in with that framework. So again, to kind of swing back to PAX East. So I don't know how many of your viewers are video game fans, but Borderlands 3 was the big announcement. So Borderlands is a pretty popular video game franchise. All the previous games in the franchise have done very well. So when they announced Borderlands 3, they handed out that there's a character called the Psycho. So it has like a goofy mask that he wears. They handed out masks to everyone that attended that announcement show. So everyone that was in that one presentation room. So for the rest of the event, all you saw was people walking around with Psycho masks hanging off their bags or on top of their heads or things like that. So they got all of these additional impressions from spending. I mean, if they got those masks in bulk, maybe they spent $1 a piece on them, $2 a piece. It's easy to look at that on a line item and be like, man, that's a waste of money. But if you look at what you would have spent for advertising to get those impressions, the ROI on it is way higher than anything that you would have gotten. And that's not counting, if you're a super fan, you're at the event, you got the mask, that's going on Instagram right away. So that's going to all their followers and all their fans. So event swag is kind of an underrated thing at this point because people look at it as like, oh, I gave away pens. Cool. But if you make things interesting, make the event make the event swag interesting, it just turns into a potentially viral thing that people want to talk about and share. So there's a lot of cool campaign things that can come out of it, but you have to really take the time to step back and look at all the pieces involved.
Yeah, I love that. That is such a great reminder and a great example of how you can take something like swag and turn it into a true marketing resource. Because logoed shirts, they're real nice, but it's kind of standard, right? So what can we do to boom, let's make a splash. I love that. So Marshall, thank you so much for coming in and sharing all this. One more time, give your contact information. If someone wanted to reach out, get in touch with you, how would they do that?
Yeah, so I'm Marshal Carper. If you plug it into Google, you'll find all sorts of things pop up. But you can go to carpercommunications.com. That's a great place to learn more about what I do. Connect with me on LinkedIn. And if you're interested in the brand-based video game concepts, you can check out Mega Cat Studios. So awesome. We'll be happy to show off all our stuff for you.
Awesome. I'm excited. I'm going to go check that out myself.
Let me know what you think.
I will. And listeners, don't forget, we have the live event Launchpad coming up. A free virtual event designed to teach you how to create profitable, life-changing events so you can go out and change the world. You can get there at liveeventlaunchpad.com, and we will talk to you all soon. Have a great day, guys.